what can't you do in a classroom? Why? What should you do if you get to the point where you're going to be really out of it? And ask them what they will want to do when they feel they're not ready to cooperate.
Hi, I'm Mike Seymour, Director of the Heritage Institute. We offer professional development courses for teachers. We're going to be talking today to one of our long-term instructors, Marianne Johnson, who's going to be addressing the subject of dealing with oppositional students. Marianne, I'd like to ask you a question. What can trigger problems for students formally diagnosed with oppositional and defiant disorder?
Well, the most common trigger is just a verbal directive. That is the one that most teachers will run into, but there are a lot of possibilities beside that. One is if you give them a certain facial expression of disapproval or body language of disapproval. It can have to do with their work. The structure of the work may be too hard or too easy. There could be too many distractions in the decor. The teacher may have too many things in the area behind them where they're standing to talk to the student. There could be too many kids walking by or discussing things near them. They may feel bad if you give them praise at the wrong time or in the wrong way because they think you're trying to control them, and that will set them off. If you ignore them, that will also set them off. You don't want to give them too much work at a time that doesn't give them a sufficient break to recharge themselves with self-control. So those are the usual things that people find you want to avoid with positive actions instead.
Great, thanks. What's the most important approach needed to avoid these triggers?
Well, for one thing, you want to reduce the number of distractions in the classroom. You want to have the student sitting in an area close to the teacher, but when the teacher speaks with the student, have the teacher in a very uncluttered area. If you want to have traffic patterns figured out in the classroom, put the student where there isn't anybody going to go by. Give them a desk that fits them carefully so their feet are on the floor, so they're very comfortable. Those would be the starting points for the classroom environment. You will have some other things for the curriculum, but you want to keep it simple and not distracting.
Marianne, how do you gain cooperation from these kinds of students and find some measure of success?
One of the most effective things you can do has to do with giving them sufficient breaks. And in order to make that work, you have to figure out what it is they would consider a break that won't set them off. For that part, usually you would incorporate the teamwork of a counselor, the principal, somebody else in authority who would be able to question the student long enough to find out what do they like to do and for how long. It'll be really important to time both the recess, so to speak, or the break, and their endurance for any subject for any length of time. After you give them work, either at the elementary or secondary level that is appropriate, then they need a break, and it's one that they will have thought up. And the teacher will need to be able to provide it, still keeping in mind that they don't want to be in an area where they're interacting a lot with emotion. It has to be something they pick to do. They can quietly go and do it. And they can also, to work effectively, be coached on what can't you do in a classroom, why, what should you do if you get to the point where you're going to be really out of it, and ask them what they will want to do when they feel they're not ready to cooperate. So a plan needs to be made that has their interests and their input, but not by the teacher as such, because then it becomes more like a manipulation.
Great. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think the main thing is that these are students who should be in a regular classroom, but it will take exceptional planning and adjustments so that they can perform and it won't bother everybody else.
Great. Thanks, Marianne.